Welcome one and all to my channel, Sermon Time. I am your host, Pastor Tony, and each week we've been revisiting a trip I took to the Bible lands, and I've been sharing what we learned while we were there. Today we're going to visit an archaeological dig we participated in while in Jerusalem, with the intent of determining what's in a lump of clay. In an earlier presentation, I alluded to a miracle Jesus performed at the Pool of Siloam. Jesus had placed mud on the eyes of a blind man and then sent him to the pool to wash. When he did, his sight was restored. I mentioned the Antiquities Department of the Israeli government has commissioned a restoration project at the site of the Pool of Siloam. It's a massive undertaking. The Pool of Siloam was about as big as an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and then you had the porticos all around. In these pictures, you can see just how big the site is. Now, because there is so much history in this little space of Israel, when they dig dirt out of one spot, they don't just dump it somewhere else. At least they're not supposed to. In this case, at Siloam, they took the dirt out of the pool and the area around it and transported it by the truckload to another site where crews were equipped to catalog their findings as they sift through the debris. We had the privilege of working alongside one of those crews sifting through the debris of Siloam. Some in our tour group found this experience very novel and fun. I was on a mission. I was hoping to find the most significant archaeological discovery since they found the place where Jesus died. Actually, what we found, bucket load after bucket load, were shards of miscellaneous pottery, olive seeds, mosaic tiles, bone fragments, and similar insignificant findings. One person, though, found an ancient Roman coin from the 1st century AD, and everybody in the group oohed and awed over this coin. I mean, what a find, right? A 2,000-year-old coin. I pretended not to be envious because there was still a lot of time left to find the big one, although I had no idea what could be greater than a Roman coin. But right near the end of our sifting adventure, our crew found this. Now, I'll be real honest with you, I thought I found another of thousands of pottery shards our group had discovered while on tour. What I didn't know is that this was the most significant archaeological find in Israel since the Roman coin was found a few minutes before. My wife took it to our tour guide, just, curious to know if there was anything to this piece of clay. He was a professional archaeologist registered with the Israeli government, and she thought he might be able to shed some light on our discovery. When he saw it, he nearly jumped out of his skin. "This is a lamele seal," he said. And while no one in our group oohed and awed over this fact, the archaeologist did over and over again. I waited a while for the full impact of that to sink in. A lamele seal. But even after minutes of silent contemplation, I wasn't any closer to understanding what made our guide so excited. So he showed us a picture from the internet of another lamele seal that was taken from a different dig in the area, and he reiterated, "That is a lamele seal." He told us, "What you found dates back to the 7th century BC. It was the handle of a large water pot that served in King Hezekiah's palace. That emblem there on the handle is his seal." Now, because of the location of our dig and the wear and tear of 2,700 years of buried history, the impression of the seal on our handle was admittedly worn off. But wow, I was still pretty excited. Later, we visited a museum where just such a pot from Hezekiah's reign had been reassembled, the whole pot. And sure enough, if you look closely at the handle, you can see the lamele seal. That was what we found. We were presented with a certificate along with our most significant finds that indicated we had participated in an official archaeological dig in Jerusalem to tell a little of the history that had happened in Israel's past. we felt pretty honored to have unearthed items that had been hidden in the ground for thousands of years. Here's a picture of those famous archaeologists. Now, I know some of you are wondering whether we were able to keep the Lamh Melech seal. So let me answer that question quickly. No. In fact, that item was so precious we were forbidden to share it with anyone until it could be properly cataloged with others of Israel's significant antiquities. However, I did get a picture of it, and from it I learned 3 important lessons. 1, what we were doing confirmed part of our biblical record. You may not be aware of it, but the world is very hostile towards ideas that our Bible contains an accurate depiction of history. What we unearthed in Jerusalem, along with others of our experiences, proves that the story of Hezekiah we have available to us in our Bible is real. First, you have the name. It's on this pot. Why is Hezekiah's name on a pot? It wasn't common to have people's names imprinted into the handles of their pots. Only kings did that. So, we know from the fact that this name is on the handle of these pots that he was, in fact, a king. See where I'm going with this? Then you have the location, right? Do you remember where I said the dirt was from that we were sifting through? The Pool of Siloam. The Pool of Siloam is located at the end of Hezekiah's tunnel. Literally, we emerged out of Hezekiah's tunnel, and the next thing we saw was the Pool of Siloam. So this shows that the timing of events makes sense. If Hezekiah came a long time before the Pool of Siloam, I mean a long, long, long time, you would not find any of his things buried under it. Hezekiah had that tunnel built in order to provide his people a continual source of water, protected within the city walls of Jerusalem. It required a massive amount of work, ingenious engineers, and a fair bit of luck. To speed up their work, workers started on opposite sides of the 1/3 mile long tunnel and dug towards each other. They were hundreds of yards apart, were at totally different elevations, and were tunneling through solid rock. You can tell by the very straight blue line between the Gihon Spring and the Siloam Pool that they had mastered this technique long before they undertook the project. Actually, they were in a huge hurry and had to get it done as quickly as possible. And they wanted it all inside the city wall, so there would be a constant source of water for the people inside the city, especially under siege. And this is important. The Pool of Siloam has Hezekiah's artifacts buried under it. In other words, the water he brought to this area and built the Pool of Siloam also has with it his pottery. It makes a whole lot of sense. And it was because of this, Hezekiah's tunnel, while the first of its kind engineering feat, was completely unknown to Israel's enemies. It was because of this secret tunnel and the water source it provided that Israel was able to withstand many sieges of their enemies, including the kings of Assyria. And this is where the story gets really interesting. In one of the museums we visited, we saw this bas-relief. It was commissioned by the king of Assyria to commemorate an attack of the Syrian armies on Jerusalem. Hezekiah was the king at that time, and the Assyrian soldiers are depicted marching in victory against Jerusalem and back home. An inscription accompanied this relief in the museum. The Assyrian general authored this inscription to be sent to his king, claiming victoriously he had locked Hezekiah in his cage, speaking of the siege that had gone on for years. But they had no clue that Hezekiah's cage was well stocked with water and food and everything they would need indefinitely. They could outlast any siege, no matter how long the enemy army was parked outside the city wall. The secular account shows Assyria won that battle. The biblical account shows the opposite, that the Israelites won. I'll let you judge for yourself which record was more accurate. But as for me, I trust the biblical account more. It takes into consideration more information. It depicts both the victories and defeats of Israel, not just the accounts that speak well of the king. Secular records tend to record only the good stuff because the historians were paid by the king, who naturally wanted to leave a good account of his reign. The biblical account, on the other hand, just tells it like it is: the good, the bad, and the ugly. So life lesson number 1, trust the Bible. Another life lesson I took from this encounter with the Melech seal has to do with the benefit of consulting experts. When I found this pottery shard, I honestly didn't know what I had in my hand. We had been digging for over an hour and found many pottery shards, ancient seeds, bone fragments, and mosaic stones. So when I found this piece, I didn't know its significance. But it was different. It was thicker, with an interesting shape and a curious figure on it. And it wasn't until we talked with the archaeologist that we knew what we were looking at. He knew in a flash, but we only knew because we had consulted with him. My wife is good at this. She's good at asking questions when she doesn't know something. And she's good at asking the experts. In this case, because she asked, we went from discovering another lump of clay to discovering the finding of a lifetime. Do you think there might be other discoveries, say in the Bible, that await us if we make the effort to ask? How many times I have met people who have come up against an idea in the Bible, it was completely foreign to them. But because they didn't understand it, and more because they didn't ask about it, they just passed on it. The Lord's Sabbath is often encountered this way. Someone who has never heard of the Sabbath discovers it in the Bible, scratches their head, shrugs their shoulders, passes on it, and they miss the huge blessing that was awaiting them after they had learned a little bit more about it and embraced it with their whole heart. I found the best way to learn about the Sabbath or any topic is to ask someone. Ask God or ask an expert who has come under its blessing. Those who've come under the Sabbath's blessing, ask them to take a few moments with you in God's Word and show you something they see and understand so well, and then to help you do the same. It's the same with many of the other lessons to be found in the Bible, lessons that are sometimes hard to understand. The second coming of Jesus. What happens when we die? What's the resurrection all about? What's the truth about heaven and hell? There are things people believe about these subjects that cannot be supported by the Bible. I mean, like, the majority of people believe it, but it isn't true, at least according to biblical standards. Beliefs that really distort the true picture of who God is and what He's up to. Things we need to know. Things we can only learn if we consult the experts who have come under the blessing of these truths. Like our archaeologist tour guide in Israel, tremendous breakthrough discoveries await us if we remain open to learning new things and listening to the experts in the areas of our quest. One last lesson struck me about this Melech seal that we found, and it comes in the form of a question. What is the value of a piece of pottery? What is the difference in value, say, of this shard of pottery and the one I found that bore Hezekiah's name? You see, as soon as the king's inscription appears on it, it went from lump of clay to archaeological discovery of a lifetime. Its value increased exponentially, no, infinitely. Well, it's the same with us. Some of us feel keenly aware that we are of not much value. But once we bear the king's seal, the king's name, the king's character upon our being, we suddenly catapult from just another mouth to feed to a precious child of the King of the universe. Our worth increases infinitely. We mean something. We belong to someone, and his inscription upon us proves the fact. One of the things we learn in our Bibles is that God wants to put his seal of ownership upon us. This world is trying to erode that seal away through hardship and friction and everyday wear and tear. And the older we get, the more keenly evident is the wear. But friends, you belong to a king. His name is Jesus. He is seen depicted in the Bible imprinting his name, his mark of ownership upon us. And that should lift your chin and make you stand a little taller. Not only you, but friends, the people of this world all belong to him. They are his. He paid an infinite price for them like he did for you. And to him, we are all treasure. Treasure, not clay. He knows our worth, and it's time we did too. So what's the value of a lump of clay? Today we learned it can set history's crooked record straight. It can lead us to valuable insights experts hold in store for those who ask. And it can lift our worth to limitless heights. If, my friends, it bears the name of our heavenly King. God bless you all with this inscription upon your heart. Until next week, have a good one.